Hi. Hi, welcome in, everyone. I'm Sal, and I'm here today with Frog. Hi, Frog.
Al, okay, I couldn't hear you.
Sorry.
Hello, everybody. Hi, Sal.
Okay, so today, as soon as I fix the chat going over Frog's beautiful face, I'll tell you
That's
what we're
okay.
doing.
I don't mind it.
There we go. Perfect. Okay, so today we are going to do a live presentation on the principles of communism. This book is super, super short. And we are probably going to redo the whole thing. And we have a slideshow accompanying it. Accompanying it. Am I saying? Well, it's going to be next to it. So there you go. It's going to be with it. Frog is actually pretty cute. Hey, Frog, check it out. You got your fans. Okay. What up, Sarah? We're going to actually read theory, bro. People are like, do you read theory? And now you can say, like, literally, you guys totally do now. Bunch of fucking nerds. Okay. Here we go. I think this is like the same song on repeat, so I'm gonna have to change that shit. Yeah, it's just the same song. What the heck, dude? Okay, let's see about this. Theory nerd over here, right? Hi, can I ask you guys a question? Sure, you can ask us a question. Okay. Let's see. Can you see the presentation, Frog? Not that you really need to. We're just going to read the book together, but... So, I don't know if you guys are on my Twitter, but like I said earlier, the best way to read theory is with somebody else, because these texts are not like, I mean, they're pretty freaking easy, but there's some like concepts, for example, the community of women, which I didn't really understand what he meant. And so Frog and I, we literally, you know, we asked each other these questions and we sorted it out, you know, we were able to figure out like what it actually means. And at the end of this presentation, we will show you exactly what we mean. So I'm excited. Do you want to start off?
Yeah, we're just gonna read straight from the text?
Yeah. Read straight from the text.
All right. And this is basically like an FAQ. So I thought that was kind of interesting. It's like an FAQ companion to the Communist Manifesto, almost. Anyway, it starts with, what is communism? And simply, the communism is the doctrine of the conditions of the liberation of the proletariat.
Holy shit. The thing on screen is like so pink that I can't freaking... Hold on. Just a second. I can hardly freaking... I've done here. Hold on. Oh no. Excuse me, please.
There we go.
There you go. Continue. Sorry.
All right. Communism is the doctrine of the conditions of the liberation of the proletariat. So there it is, nice and simple. And then he goes on. Number 2, what is the proletariat? The proletariat is that class in society which lives entirely from the sale of its labor and does not draw profit from any kind of capital, whose weal and woe, whose life and death, whose sole existence depends on the demand for labor, hence on the changing state of business, on the vagaries of unbridled competition. The proletariat, or the class of proletarians, is, in a word, the working class of the 19th century.
Thanks for following. Okay.
And see how much you want me to read here before we talk about it, or switch over to you.
If you want to talk about, like, if you have something that you want to like add to it, you can just go off, you know.
All right, well, not really. He goes into a lot of detail about proletariat here coming up. He goes on, proletarians then, have they not always existed? No. There have always been poor and working classes, and the working class have mostly been poor. But there have not always been workers and poor people living under conditions as they are today. In other words, there have not always been proletarians, any more than there has always been free, unbridled competitions. Okay, and the next one's kind of a longer one. How did the proletariat originate? Okay, the proletariat originated in the Industrial Revolution, which took place in England in the last half of the last century, 18th century, and which has since then been repeated in all the civilized countries of the world. The Industrial Revolution was precipitated by the discovery of the steam engine, various spinning machines, the mechanical loom, and a whole series of other mechanical devices. These machines, which were very expensive and hence could be bought only by big capitalists, altered the whole mode of production and displaced the former workers, because the machines turned out cheaper and better commodities than the workers could produce with their inefficient spinning wheels and hand looms. The machines delivered industry wholly into the hands of the big capitalists and rendered entirely worthless the meager property of the workers, tools, looms, etc. The result was that the capitalists soon had everything in their hands, and nothing remained to the workers. This marked the introduction of the factory system into the textile industry. Once the impulse to the introduction of machinery and the factory system had been given, this system spread quickly to all other branches of industry, especially cloth and book printing, pottery, and the metal industries. Labor was more and more divided among the individual workers, so that the worker who previously had done a complete piece of work now only did a part of that piece. This division of labor made it possible to produce things faster and cheaper. It reduced the activity of the individual worker to simple, endlessly repeated mechanical motions which could be performed not only as well, but much better by a machine. In this way, all industries fell, one after another, under the dominance of steam, machinery, and the factory system, just as spinning and weaving had already done. But at the same time, they also fell into the hands of big capitalists, and their workers were deprived of whatever independence remained to them. Gradually, not only genuine manufacture, but also handicrafts came within the province of the factory system, as big capitalists increasingly displaced the small master craftsmen by setting up huge workshops, which saved many expenses and permitted an elaborate division of labor. This is how it has come about that in civilized countries at the present time, nearly all kinds of labor are performed in factories. And in nearly all branches of work, handicrafts and manufacture have been superseded. This process has, to an ever greater degree, ruined the old middle class, especially the small handicraftsmen. It has entirely transformed the condition of the workers, and two new classes have been created which are gradually swallowing up all the others. These are: 1. The class of big capitalists, who in all civilized countries are already in almost exclusive possession of all the means of subsistence and of the instruments, machines, factories, and materials necessary for the production of the means of subsistence. This is the bourgeois class, or the bourgeoisie. Then 2. The class of the wholly propertyless, who are obliged to sell their labor to the bourgeoisie in order to get, in exchange, the means of subsistence for their support. This is called the class of proletarians, or the proletariat.
Okay, so here is a good point to point out, or part to point out, that, like, as you can see, this is still happening today. Like, we still have the bourgeoisie class, which own the means of production, and we still have proletarians, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, the thing that's playing is really funny. Wheel and woe. I hate every capitalist I see, from bourgeois to bourgeoisie. I love that.
Wheel and woe.
Wheel and woe.
They're like hue and cry. Hope and seethe.
Cope and seethe. Oh my god, I actually love that. Okay, so we actually just reached our affiliate as well. So we will be having like super fun emotes coming up shortly, and also channel reward points so you can make us like do stuff or something. And we'll have like sound alerts too. Thanks for following Mike from PV. Uh-oh. Is this one of those fake Mike from PA type of situation? What's happening? Okay, it's fine. Sarah will ban you if need be. Okay, I can start reading now too if you want, or if you want to add any more to about like what you just read. Talk about that.
I don't think I really need to add anything.
Okay.
Unless anyone has any questions about it or anything.
Yes, anyone in the chat, if you have questions, feel free, please, to ask. Sarah, ban me. Ugh. Look who it is. It's Hayes. What do we say to Hayes?
Hayes.
I would love to. Okay. Under what conditions does this sale of labor of the proletarians to the bourgeoisie take place? Labor is a commodity like any other, and its price is therefore determined by exactly the same laws that apply to other commodities. In a regime of big industry or of free competition, as we shall see, the two come to the same thing. The price of a commodity is, on the average, always equal to the cost of production. Hence, the price of labor is also equal to the cost of production. But the cost of production of labor consists of precisely the quantity of means of subsistence necessary to enable the worker to continue working and to prevent the working class from dying out. The worker will therefore get no more for his labor than is necessary for this purpose. The price of labor, or the wage, will, in other words, be the lowest, the minimum required for the maintenance of life. However, since business is sometimes better and sometimes worse, it follows that the worker sometimes gets more and sometimes gets less for his commodities. But again, just as the industrialist on the average of good times and bad times gets no more and no less for his commodities than what they cost, similarly, on average, the worker gets no more and no less than his minimum. The economic law of wages operates the more strictly the greater degree to which big industry has been taken possession of all the branches of production. What working classes were there before the Industrial Revolution? Oh shoot, I'm like way behind. Okay, so yeah, this is just showing the bourgeoisie on the top and the proletarians on the bottom.
Oh yeah, that's from the last section.
Yeah. Under what conditions is the sale of labor? Okay, yeah, that was what I just read. Labor is a commodity like any other, and its price is therefore determined by exactly the same law that applies to other commodities. Okay, what working classes were there before the Industrial Revolution? The working classes have always, according to the different stages of development of society, lived in different circumstances and had different relationships to the owning and ruling class. In antiquity, the workers were the slaves of the owners, just as they still are in many backwards countries, and even in the southern part of the United States. Well, it's actually funny because slavery really never went away in the United States, which is...
No, it just changed forms.
Yeah, he doesn't like acknowledge that, but he sort of did in the southern part of the United States, but we still have slavery to this day in the United States.
Yeah, well, this was also written in 1847, so this was before abolition.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah, that makes more sense. In the Middle Ages, they were the serfs of the land-owning nobility, and they still are in Hungary, Poland, and Russia. In the Middle Ages, and indeed right up to the Industrial Revolution, they were also journeymen in the city who worked in the service of the petty bourgeois masters. Gradually, as manufacture developed, these journeymen became manufacturing workers who even then employed or by larger capitalists. That was weird. A weird sentence. The features of the proletariat. Wait, did I skip?
Um, Wait, hang on.
Where did this come from?
Is that
Here, hold on. Let me.
is that out of order,
Shouldn't be.
or are we out of sync some way?
Oh, okay. Here, I found it. I just named it different.
And someone in the chat, comrade Kid Fur, said, "So they just pay you enough to not revolt." Sounds about right. Yeah,
Right.
basically, they're only
It's,
going to pay you what you need to survive, and then they take the surplus.
and they put that shit in their pocket. Okay, so I'm at 7. Was that where we are? Yeah, that's where we were. So, in what way do proletarians differ from slaves? The slave is sold once and for all. The proletarian must sell himself daily and hourly. The individual slave property of one master is assured an existence, however miserable that may be, because of the master's interests. The individual proletarian property, as it were, of the entire bourgeois class, which purchases labor only when somebody has need of it, has no secure existence. The existence is assuredly only to the class as a whole. The slave is outside competition. The proletarian is in it and experiences all its vagaries. The slave counts as a thing and not a member of society. Thus, the slave can have a better existence than the proletarian, while the proletarian belongs to a higher stage of social development and himself stands on a higher social level than the slave. The slave frees himself when all of the relations of private property of all the relations of private property, he abolishes only the relation of slavery and therefore becomes a proletarian. The proletarian can free himself only by abolishing private property in general. Right? So it's saying that, like, it's a weird way of framing it because, like, yeah, slavery is fucking terrible, but it's saying that, like, they had to, like, feed you and stuff. Otherwise, you wouldn't, like, be able to work. Right? So he was saying that that's the difference between a proletariat because the ruling class would be just like, I don't have to feed you, fuck you. You know?
He points out an interesting contradiction here too, is that the slave, while at a lower status, actually can have a better existence than the proletarian.
Yeah.
So the proletarian is a higher status, but they're actually in more peril because they are not guaranteed a survival.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, a lot of this is kind of a controversial argument. I think this is exactly what the slave owners in the South said. They criticized wage labor and said that's just the same thing, except we're guaranteeing subsistence for our slaves.
Yeah, it's definitely a privileged white way of looking at that relationship, but I don't think that part of it is definitely like untrue. But it's not. It's like slavery is bad. It's not good. Like it's terrible, obviously. And I don't think that he's. I think he's saying that they're both awful, right?
Yeah, I don't think he's promoting slavery in
Yeah.
any way.
To be
He's
clear.
just he's just clarifying that wage slaves are wage workers are wage slaves. It's just a different form of slavery.
Okay, so Kook says slavery is a guaranteed and legal social position. Proletarianism is an anarchic personal struggle under which labor is not guaranteed as a right to anybody and they must find it for themselves. Yeah. Inshallah, Habibi. Inshallah. Inshallah? Inshallah. Whichever, however you say it. So it's like renting a movie versus owning a movie. You don't pay fees if you damage the rental. You can't just rent a new one. Rob, what do you think about that analogy?
Um, yeah, I think that works on some level.
Authority machine
Because
go
if you
burr.
if you own if you own something, then you're going to take better care of it. If you're renting it, which is basically if you're a capitalist and you have workers under your control, you're basically renting their labor. As opposed to the slave, you own them and you actually will care about their well-being and their ability to work. They
To an
can't be as
extent.
easily replaced.
Right.
Right, yeah. So they're just yeah, as Kish Kami says, they're just different forms of exploitation, and they're both bad, of course.
Correct. Okay. In what way do proletarians differ from serfs? Oh, shoot. So serfs possess and use an instrument of production, a piece of land, in exchange for which he gives up part of his product or part of the services of his labor. The proletarian works with the instrument of production for another, right? So the serf has this shit, and they have all the instruments, they have the land, they have this stuff, right? The proletarian doesn't. The proletarian is just the worker, and they go in and they use the stuff and they leave, right? Because it's all about the ownership of the means of production. The serf gives up, the proletarian receives, right? So the serf will have like a plot of land, and you'll have to do like potatoes, and 90% of your potatoes go towards the lord or whatever, right? And you keep the 10% of the potatoes, right? So you're keeping things, right? Versus the capitalist is giving you the money as a proletarian. The serf has an assured existence, and the proletarian has not. The serf is outside competition, the proletariat is inside. The serf liberates himself in one of three ways. Either he runs away to a city and becomes a handy craftsman, or instead of products and services, he gives money to his lord and thereby becomes a free tenant, or he overthrows his feudal lord and himself becomes the property owner. In short, by one route or another, he gets in the owning class and enters into the competition. The proletariat liberates himself by abolishing competition, private property, and all class differences. Do you want to read now?
Sure. Okay. In what way do proletarians differ from handicraftsmen? In contrast to the proletarian, the so-called handicraftsman, as he still existed almost everywhere in the past 18th century, and still exists here and there at present, is a proletarian at most temporarily. His goal is to acquire capital himself, wherewith to exploit other workers. He can often achieve this goal where guilds still exist, or where freedom from guild restrictions has not yet led to the introduction of factory-style methods into the crafts, nor yet to fierce competition. But as soon as the factory system has been introduced into the crafts and competition flourishes fully, this perspective dwindles away, and the handicraftsman becomes more and more a proletarian. The handicraftsman therefore frees himself by becoming either bourgeois or entering the middle class in general, or becoming a proletarian because of competition, as is now more often the case, in which case he can free himself by joining the proletarian movement, that is, the more or less communist movement. And so basically this is just still talking about proletarianization, handicraftsmen being absorbed into the proletariat. And let's see. Okay, section 10. In what way do proletarians differ from manufacturing workers? The manufacturing worker of the 16th to the 18th centuries still had, but with few exception, an instrument of production in his own possession. His loom, the family spinning wheel, a little plot of land which he cultivated in his spare time. The proletarian has none of these things. The manufacturing worker almost always lives in the countryside, and in a more or less patriarchal relation to his landlord or employer. The proletarian lives, for the most part, in the city, and his relation to his employer is purely a cash relation. The manufacturing worker is torn out of his patriarchal relation by big industry, loses whatever property he still has, and in this way becomes a proletarian.
Wait, what did I get banned for? What did I say? everyone
Yeah,
had
banned?
like a really bad react from something I said. Was it when I was talking about the fucking slavery? I'm sorry. I'll do better. Sorry.
What? Did I miss something?
No, I guess I said something and everyone's like, Sal, white, Sal. I said, what's the problem? Sal, Sarah doesn't like me. Banning Sal, IRL. Like, I don't know. It just so confused. I'll be your slave, Sal. Wow. Jake, god damn it. No. Hey, I'm sorry. Listen, I'm sorry. We're gonna move on though. We're just gonna move on. We're gonna move on.
I like this whole section where he goes through like the different classes and the way that they are pushed into the proletariat, showing how capitalism will dominates all classes, brings everybody into its fold.
I'm white, so I need to be banned. That's fair. That's fair. I am a white. I'm so sorry. Oh my god.
Someone's gonna take some of that slavery talk and clip it out of context. I just know it.
No! Fuck. I'm gonna be so fucking canceled. Shit. Stop being white. I don't know. I don't think I can. Imagine being Caucasian. Okay, I'm so sorry. What were
Hayes
the
trolling in the chat.
Ahab. What were the immediate
Ahab.
consequences of the Industrial Revolution and the division of society into bourgeoisie and proletariat? Do you want to read this one?
Sure. It's another long one here.
Okay.
All right. First, the lower and lower prices of industrial products brought about by machine labor totally destroyed in all countries of the world the old system of manufacture or industry based upon hand labor. In this way, all semi-barbarian countries, which had hitherto been more or less strangers to historical development and whose industry had been based on manufacture, were violently forced out of their isolation. They brought the cheaper commodities of the English and allowed their own manufacturing workers to be ruined. Countries which had known no progress for thousands of years, for example, India, were thoroughly revolutionized, and even China is now on the way to a revolution. We have come to the point where a new machine invented in England deprives millions of Chinese workers of their livelihood within a year's time. In this way, big industry has brought all the people of the earth into contact with each other, has merged all local markets into one world market, has spread civilization and progress everywhere, and has thus ensured that whatever happens in civilized countries will have repercussions in all other countries. It follows that if the workers in England or France now liberate themselves, this must set off revolution in all other countries, revolutions which, sooner or later, must accomplish the liberation of their respective working class. Second, wherever big industries displaced manufacture, the bourgeoisie developed in wealth and power to the utmost and made itself the first class of the country. The result was that wherever this happened, the bourgeoisie took political power into its own hands and displaced the hitherto ruling classes, the aristocracy, the guildmasters, and the representative, the absolute monarchy. Bourgeoisie annihilated the power of the aristocracy, the nobility, by abolishing the entailment of estates. In other words, by making landed property subject to purchase and sale, and by doing away with the special privileges of the nobility. It destroyed the power of the guildmasters by abolishing guilds and handicraft privileges. In their place, it put competition, that is, a state of society in which everyone has the right to enter into any branch of industry, the only obstacle being a lack of the necessary capital. The introduction of free competition is thus public declaration that from now on, the members of society are unequal only to the extent that their capitals are unequal. that capital is the decisive power, and that therefore the capitalists, the bourgeoisie, have become the first class in society. Free competition is necessary for the establishment of big industry because it is the only condition of society in which big industry can make its way. Having destroyed the social power of the nobility and the guildmasters, the bourgeois also destroyed their political power. Having raised itself to the actual position of first class in society, it proclaims itself to be the dominant political class. This it does through the introduction of the representative system, which rests on bourgeois equality before the law and the recognition of free competition, and in European countries takes the form of constitutional monarchy. In these constitutional monarchies, only those who possess a certain capital are voters, that is to say, only members of the bourgeoisie. These bourgeois voters choose the deputies, and these bourgeois deputies, by using their right to refuse to vote taxes, choose a bourgeois government. Third, everywhere the proletariat develops in step with the bourgeoisie. In proportion as the bourgeoisie grows in wealth, the proletariat grows in numbers. For since the proletarians can be employed only by capital, and since capital extends only through employing labor, it follows that the growth of the proletariat proceeds at precisely the same pace as the growth of capital. Simultaneously, this process draws members of the bourgeoisie and proletarians together into the great cities, where industry can be carried on most profitably. And by thus throwing great masses in one spot, it gives to the proletarians a consciousness of their own strength. Moreover, the further this process advances, the more new labor-saving machines are invented, the greater is the pressure exercised by big industry on wages, which, as we have seen, sink to their minimum and therewith render the condition of the proletariat increasingly unbearable. The growing dissatisfaction of the proletariat thus joins with its rising power to prepare a proletarian social revolution. That's a long section. Sorry, I didn't get a chance to read any comments. If anyone had
We
anything to
got
say.
a raid. Welcome in, Comrade Gomer. Thank you so much for the raid. Right now, we are going over the principles of communism in presentation form. We are reading the whole book because it's very short, and we're just chatting about it. So thank you so much for being welcome in. Yes. Okay. How was your stream? Oh, look at those chips. I love those little chips. Thanks for following, Marksy Hart. Okay. Ooh. Thanks for
So
following
that
Chompopotamus.
last section said a lot of stuff.
Okay, you
Maybe
want
we
to talk
should
about
dig
it?
into that.
Sure. Okay, so Big Industry created the steam engine. Wait, is that what? No, that wasn't it.
We're on section 11.
11, sure. First, to lower and
Basically
lower prices. Okay,
basically
go.
how capitalism has grown basically to affect the whole world and create a world market, and talks about the how the bourgeoisie basically overthrew the absolute monarchy and created private property, basically, because feudal property ownership was really like the king owned everything, and then he would lease the land out to the lords. So there wasn't really private ownership in the same sense as there is under capitalism.
Right, that's what they were saying. Like the people who were living on the land, they were just responsible for like keeping track of that land and making sure like the king or whoever got what they want, you know, like
Right? Yeah, it was
food and
rent.
shit
They
like
even
that.
called it
Yeah.
rent. Like when a serf would produce, he'd give a portion to the lord, and that was considered his rent for being able to live on the land. But the lords though weren't actually private owners of the land though, because everything was controlled by the monarchy, and so capitalism changed that and brought in private ownership of land.
Yeah.
And he also kind of describes here how the dictatorship of the bourgeoisie is formed. How the bourgeois overthrew the monarchy, and so then they basically created these constitutional monarchies, which then you could only vote if you had a certain amount of capital, and then those voters would elect, bourgeois deputies and whatnot. And so basically, they constructed a whole government that only favored the bourgeois class.
Right, yeah. So it's always been like something that has been like an oppressive relationship, you know? It's just changed forms.
Yeah. And he also goes on about how, as capitalism grows, as the bourgeois um, develop their capitalism and the forces of production increase, then the proletariat increases. So it's kind of getting into this capitalism will dig its own grave kind of thing. As capitalism grows, it creates this proletariat that concentrates in the cities, where they start to realize their collective power.
Mm. Based. Okay.
Comrade Kid Fur asked, how's that connect to our current conditions since we're not doing a lot of manufacturing jobs now? That's true. A lot of manufacturing has been basically exported, but we still have. I mean, most of the proletariat in the U.S. anyway are like service industries, retail, and stuff, which is basically the same thing, even though it's not directly production of commodities. It's still the same kind of relationship. Anything you have to say about that, Sal?
Yeah, like okay, so I feel like maybe it's harder to organize because of that purpose, you know? Like it's definitely harder because of the way we're spread out, you know, and how they separate us at our jobs like little fucking cubicles or whatever. They try to
Mm-hmm.
individualize us so that we don't have this collective power. Um so yeah, that's by design, I would say.
Yep, and there's still manufacturing here for sure, but
Right.
most of it has been exported, which, I mean, you can kind of get into Lenin on that, his ideas of imperialism. Although Marx and Engels also kind of spoke about that too.
No, Keith. There's a lot of jobs manufacturing in the media. Manufacturing consent. Got him. What up, V? Thanks for being here. Now a lot of people work from home, which makes organizing even harder. Oh, yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like, we're so spread out in these little suburban homes, like just staring at our fucking computer all alone. Okay, so what were the further consequences of the Industrial Revolution? Big industry created in the steam engine and other machines, the means of endlessly expanding industrial production, speeding it up, and cutting costs. With production thus facilitated, thank you for following, which is necessarily bound up with big industry, assume the most extreme forms. A multitude of capitalists invaded industry, and in a short while, more was produced than was needed. As a consequence, finished commodities could not be sold, and so-called commercial crisis broke out. Factories had to be closed, their workers went bankrupt, and the workers were all without bread. Deep misery reigned everywhere. After a time, the superfluous products were sold. The factories began to operate again, wages rose, and gradually businesses got better than ever. But it was not long before too many commodities were again produced and a new crisis broke out. Only to follow the same course as its predecessor. Ever since the beginning of the 19th century, the condition of industry has constantly fluctuated between periods of prosperity and periods of crisis. Nearly every 5 to 7 years, a fresh crisis has intervened, always with the greatest hardship for the workers and always accompanied by a general revolutionary stirring, or by general revolutionary stirrings and the direct peril to the whole existing order of things. So we are still seeing these type of boom and bust cycles.
This section is a banger. This is still so relevant. You see
Yeah,
it. all the time.
I mean, look what happened during
Overproduction.
COVID too. Like, overproduction, yes, but like, sorry, you can expand on that. I'm gonna drink some tea.
Well, he's specifically talking about overproduction
Yeah.
here, but the same also goes with like financial capital. The whole stock market ends up basically the stock market ends up detached from actual production and
Oh
just
yeah.
naturally forms these bubbles that have to pop and bring down the economy. So he's talking about production here, but it applies to financial capital too.
2008 was just 10 years ago. 13. Yeah. The housing market crisis, that was ridiculous. My family like lost everything in that. Yeah. So,
And they use this in their propaganda too. This boom and bust because the two parties like to blame each other for it. It's just the natural system of capitalism, which is going to collapse to some degree every couple of years, and then they just blame it on the last president and say, "Oh, that was the Democrats. No, that was the Republicans." And so they're disguising the true nature of these crises.
right, because they are protecting their class interests, They don't care that the fucking people go hungry because they aren't going hungry.
Yeah, and they know what causes it too. They,
Hmm.
they know these people are not stupid.
They're evil.
Yeah,
So, what follows these periodic commercial crises? First, oh, hold on, let me see. Hold on. I'm going to go back to this one. First, that though big industry in its earliest stage created free competition, it had not outgrown free competition. That for big industry, competition and generally the individualistic organization of production have become a fetter which it must and will shatter. Okay, so this is when we call like the free market like anarchistic, right? Because these businesses aren't working together to see what people actually need, right? They're just like pumping shit out to try to get a buck, That like I just feel like that's very
yeah.
futile, Silly.
Anarchy of production.
Yeah. The anarchy of production. That so long as big industry remains on its present footing, it can be maintained only at the cost of general chaos every 7 years, each time threatening the whole of civilization and not only plunging the proletariats into misery, but also ruining a large section of the bourgeoisie. So these people, they don't fucking even care about themselves. Like, they don't care about each other. They care about them, like, the one of them. They don't care about their class. To an extent, they do, as they protect themselves through laws. But if they have to watch another person lose all their money so they can survive, they're not going to fucking help. Like, that's ridiculous.
That's the nature of capitalist competition too, because there are some that are going to fail and they inevitably get absorbed into larger capitalists, basically,
Yes, we are
which is how
reading a
we end up with
specific book.
monopolies.
Yep, that is exactly how. And I love that they like people have such a different view of that game, right? Like, ever since I was a child, I never fucking liked that game because I'm like, this game sucks. This game is stupid and everyone's buying all the shit and like it just sucks. Like, I don't have enough money to do it. Like, I couldn't even play the fucking Monopoly game and win. So, once it was told to me that this is actually uh, a thing made by a socialist who was teaching the dangers of monopolies, I'm like, oh, no wonder that game fucking sucks. Like, damn. Like, I
Wait,
learned that
was
lesson.
Monopoly really made by a socialist?
Yeah. And then
Makes
they
sense.
they
It
stole
shows.
it. The capitalists stole it, and they made it
Uh,
a really fun game. Isn't that ridiculous?
Yeah, and that's such a contradiction too. It's like they praise the liberals will praise competition, but they kind of ignore that when there's a competition, people are going to lose. People are going to end up destitute.
Yeah, I don't want to hear them fucking crying about small businesses while promoting a free market. You don't give a fuck about small businesses, you know?
Yep.
So, hence, either that or big industry, it must itself be given up, which is an absolute impossibility, or that it makes unavoidably necessary an entirely new organization of society in which production is no longer directed by mutually competing individuals, which is what I was getting at, individual industries, but rather by the whole society operating according to a definite plan and taking account of the needs of all, right? This is why we like centralization, because all of these things acting independently to serve themselves and not the community is not the way we need to organize fucking society. It's ignorant, it's bad, and it only serves the ruling class. So second, that big industry and the limitless expansion of the production which makes it possible bring within the range of feasibility and social order in which so much is produced that every member of society will be in a position to exercise and develop all his powers and faculties in complete freedom. It thus appears that the very qualities of big industry, which in our present day society produce misery and crisis, all are those which, in a different form of society, will abolish the misery and the catastrophic depressions. We see with the greatest clarity that one, all of these evils are from now on to be ascribed solely to a social order, which no longer corresponds to the requirements of the real situation, and two, that it is possible through a new social order to do away with these evils altogether. Right? We just have to reorganize society so that it cares about the people. You want to read 14?
Oh, I was gonna say I like here how he talks about the the same things that create misery in capitalism will be the things that liberate us in a different social order. So, like how people talk about automation, and people are so worried about automation because people are going to lose their jobs and they're going to, be out on the street. But under socialism, automation would be a form of liberation.
Right. I always like to bring up, like, in Detroit Becoming Human, like, they were having such terrible problems because of the droids, right? Like, because of the AI. And the capitalists were not doing anything to help the people, right? In that game, they just like let them die. And there was like 40% unemployment in the United States, because of this automation, hypothetically in a video game. But yeah, I just thought it was a nice thought experiment, like of what not to do.
I, I haven't played that one.
Oh, it's so good.
Is it? I'll have to check that.
Yeah, so what happens is all the AI take up the jobs like that are essential workers now,
Mm-hmm.
So instead of like paying somebody forever, they just buy this like cheap robot, and then the person who had that job is fucked. They're like, "Okay, bye, fuck you." And yeah, I think Elizabeth
Yeah, we're
Warren
gonna
was
see that
present
happen
too.
under capitalism.
Yeah, we are absolutely
We
are
already
like,
see it.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They're just gonna be like, "Sorry, fuck you." Android rights, yes. I started an Android revolution, successful revolution. So actually, I can say that I'm a true communist now because I have done a successful revolution. Okay. Do you want to read the next one? Or was I going to read it?
Sure, we're on 14, right?
Yeah.
What will this new social order have to be like? Above all, it will have to take the control of industry and of all branches of production out of the hands of mutually competing individuals, and instead institute a system in which all these branches of production are operated by society as a whole. That is, for the common account, according to a common plan, and with the participation of all members of society. It will, in other words, abolish competition and replace it with association. Moreover, since the management of industry by individuals necessarily implies private property, and since competition is in reality merely the manner and form in which the control of industry by private property owners expresses itself, it follows that private property cannot be separated from competition and the individual management of industry. Private property must therefore be abolished, and in its place must come the common utilization of all instruments of production and the distribution of all products according to common agreement. In a word, what is called the communal ownership of goods. In fact, the abolition of private property is doubtless the shortest and most significant way to characterize the revolution in the whole social order which has been made necessary by the development of industry. And for this reason, it is rightly advanced by communists as their main demand. And that's true. Abolish private property.
Sorry, I was just laughing at PG saying dog walk me.
I'm missing all this fun stuff in the chat while I'm reading. Anyway, all right. 15. What was not the abolition of private property possible at an earlier time? No. Every change in the social order, every revolution in property relations is the necessary consequence of the creation of new forces of production which no longer fit into the old property relations. Private property has not always existed. When, towards the end of the Middle Ages, there arose a new mode of production which could not be carried on under the then existing feudal and guild forms of property, this manufacture, which had outgrown the old property relations, created a new property form, private property. And for manufacture and the earliest stage of development of big industry, private property was the only possible property form. The social order based on it was the only possible social order. So long as it is not possible to produce so much that there is enough for all, with more left over for expanding the social capital and extending the forces of production, so long as this is not possible, there must always be a ruling class directing the use of society's productive forces, and a poor, oppressed class. How these classes are constituted depends on the stage of development. The agrarian Middle Ages give us the baron and the serf. The cities of the later Middle Ages show us the guildmaster and the journeyman and the day laborer. The 17th century has its manufacturing workers. The 19th has big factory owners and proletarians. It is clear that, up to now, the forces of production have never been developed to the point where enough could be developed for all, and that private property has become a fetter and a barrier in relation to the further development of the forces of production. Now, however, the development of big industry has ushered in a new period. Capital and the forces of production have been expanded to an unprecedented extent, and the means are at hand to multiply them without limit in the near future. Moreover, the forces of production have been concentrated in the hands of a few bourgeois, while the great mass of people are more and more falling into the proletariat, their situation becoming more wretched and intolerable in proportion to the increase of wealth of the bourgeoisie. And finally, these mighty and easily extended forces of production have so far outgrown private property and the bourgeoisie that they threaten at any moment to unleash the most violent disturbances of the social order. Now, under these conditions, the abolition of private property has become not only possible but absolutely necessary. I really like this section. He's basically going into historical materialism here.
So historical materialism. You want to give a brief overview of what that is?
Um,
Just like the process of examining things that are constantly in motion and how they're connected.
yeah, I mean that's kind of a big topic to summarize.
Do it in 5 words or less.
um, the study of contradictions in history. Is that 5 words?
Damn, that was pretty good. 6. I'll take it. 6 words. Nice job. So yeah, we always need to look back and pay attention to what's happening. That's why when these silly people on Twitter are like, "Hey, let's do this," we're like, "Well, probably you should check out, this, this, and this." And they're like, "Why do I need to read history to know what I'm talking about?" And I'm like, "Bro, yes, always Ahab."
Peach Kami says basically the forces of production influences the relations of production. Uh, yeah, basically.
So we advance to the point where we can produce things for everyone. The only reason we don't is to keep the capitalists in power. Well, no. Well, okay, so we have reached the point where we can provide things for everybody. The only reason we don't is because the capitalists won't. Like, they're like, fuck
Yep.
you. I don't fucking care. I want to be rich. I don't care about the people dying. Like, that's what they're saying.
Yeah, this kind of gets back into overproduction again. And he mentioned it in an earlier section how basically as the forces of production increase, then it becomes easier to make commodities, and then it gets to a point where the profits fall because it's easy to produce something, and so the value goes down, and so it gets to the point where they can't make profits anymore, and so rather than just uh, giving up their commodities for free to people who need them, they'd rather just completely shut down and cause a crisis.
Hell yeah. Like, they,
And
like, this, an example of this that I love to bring up is like the PS5s. You know, like they have
uh,
enough stuff. They could make the PS5s for everyone, or but they don't. Why do they do that? Because then it would cost less. Then they couldn't charge as much. Then they couldn't. Um, I don't think it's about
they
the.
love that they love that scarcity, but I
Yeah.
would say even something like food production, I
Oh
think
yeah.
is the best example because we produce enough food that we could easily feed every single person on earth. But instead, they do things like they will destroy crops instead. They'll just instead of harvesting them, they'll just destroy them, or they will throw out perfectly good food. Like the U.S. throws out like hundreds of millions of tons of food every year
Yeah, and then and
because if we have too much food, they can't profit off of it, and so they would rather just throw it away.
absolutely, and they will call the police for people digging behind dumpsters. So they criminalize taking the food that is still useful, like, out of the dumpster too. Like, I just think that the whole fucking situation pisses me off. um, yeah. Why don't I have a PS5? Because Sony sucks. Wilhelm. Yeah, I like to bring up the PS5 for my oppressed gamers.
So Sony's reactionary. They're
Oh
against
yeah.
cross platform games.
Honestly, they are. That's just ridiculous. Why? Under
Yeah,
communism, we will have the same phone charger for every fucking phone, all right? And this phone will not have a glass front that breaks when you look at it wrong. What? These things are like not hard, but these things could be changed now, but they're not changed now. Why? Because they like to charge $350 for you to get a new fucking phone screen. It's just everything is a fucking racket. And then Apple, they want you to buy dongle after dongle. How much did their like thing cost? That like it was $1,000 for a stand. Not even a computer, just a stand. What? You don't think that's insane? I'm getting off topic for sure because I'm like just bitching about capitalism at this point, but
Keck Celesta says communism is when you don't own your toothbrush.
that's
Yes,
right.
give me your toothbrush.
We
Hand it
will,
over.
yeah, we will all share a toothbrush under communism. Imagine not paying $500 for a dongle. Yeah, dongleism is killing us. Truly. What is a dongle? A dongle is a useless thing that they've made useful by making, like, designing it in a way where you have to have a plug for a plug for a plug. You know?
Oh yeah, and every company has their own
Plug.
proprietary dongles and shit.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely ridiculous. Less
Less
dongleism.
dongleism, more dungism.
No, I don't think that we're not dang dongism. I love that. Ding dongism. That's what most people's ideology is on Twitter. I made myself lol. He made me lol too. Okay, where are we at? Sorry, I get so off topic.
We are 16.
Okay. Will the
Okay.
peaceful abolition of private property be possible? Will it? Will it, you guys? I don't know. We've been trying. Let's read. It would be desirable if this could happen, obviously. The communists would certainly be the last to oppose it. Communists know too well that all conspiracies are not only useless, but even harmful. They know all too well that revolutions are not made intentionally and arbitrarily, but that everywhere and always they have always been a necessary consequence of conditions which were wholly independent of the will and direction of the individual parties and entire class. But they also see that the development of the proletariat is in nearly all civilized countries has been violently suppressed. And that in this way, the opponents of communism have been working toward a revolution with all their strength. If the oppressed proletariat is finally driven to revolution, then we communists will defend the interests of the proletariat with the deeds as we now defend them with words. Hold on, let me read that again. If the oppressed proletariat is finally driven to revolution, then we communists will defend the interest of the proletarians with deeds as we now defend them with words. So that's fucking poggers.
Don't say poggers, you're gonna irritate Sarah.
Pog champ.
That reminded me of Fidel Castro had a quote. It said something like, "Revolution isn't the path we chose; it's the path that was given to us by the capitalists or by the oppressors." I forget what he said exactly.
I was just going to say something like that too. Like, well, not as good as he did, but like, yeah, we're not the ones wanting this. Like, the capitalists are the ones pushing this forward because of the violent oppression that they do to us. There's only so many of them, and eventually they're gonna piss enough of us off so that they fucked themselves, you know? This is their creation. And I think that's important to point out. God, I jumped on this when Sal said poggers. Welcome, Reggie. Engels himself was a revolutionary who defended their interests with deeds. Absolutely.
That's
Piggybacking
right.
off of what we talked about a few streams ago. Yes, yes. Capitalism is violence. Yes.
Engels was such a Chad.
He was a fucking Chad. And he hardly gets any recognition, you know? Like, I mean, by us he does, but like...
Yeah, they treat him like he was Marx's little fanboy or something.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm like, bro, come on. Like, he was way cooler than Marx, probably. Like Marx wrote a really boring book, and Engels wrote all bangers.
I think that's why they complemented each other so well. Marx got into like the nitty gritty economics and all the details, and then Engels kind of wrote in a way that was a lot easier for everyday people to understand, and he kind of took Marx's ideas and condensed them.
Engels is red fash. No, is Vosh in the chat? He got recognition in that one meme. In the meme that I made. I make a whole bunch of... Look, did you see the thing that I made?
Which meme is that?
Have you gentlemen ever seen a revolution?
Oh,
I made like a beautiful like with flowers and he has bubble gum in his mouth and everything. Really cute. But look, I also made him today. Oh, hold on. A new meme.
Choice 777 says Engels wrote Socialism, Utopian, and Scientific, super ahead of his time. Yeah, we should cover that on one of these streams because that's
I
another
actually
another
have
great book.
a presentation on that. So yeah, we can. Yeah, I already made one. But yeah, do you see this beautiful meme? Like he's holding his book. It looks great. I love it. He needs more memes.
I hope I end up with like a dual colored beard like that.
Right? He's just gorgeous. And like I wish they would have taken more pictures of themselves because I only have a few photos of him to work off of, you know? He wasn't just his buddy, he was also his guy. That's so funny.
Sal and Frog are red fash according to Twitter. Yeah, hear that a lot.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. It's because I read, I guess, and I espouse these things that I read, and that is indicative of being red fash. Yes. Ooh, bread fash. Red frog. Red frog.
Are those the poisonous ones?
I think so. Yeah. I think any bright colored thing you probably shouldn't eat. Okay. Let's see.
Oh, what are we at? 17?
Yeah.
Will it be possible for private property to be abolished at one stroke? No. No more than existing forces of production can at one stroke be multiplied to the extent necessary for the creation of a communal society. In all probability, the proletarian revolution will transform existing society gradually and will be able to abolish private property only when the means of production are available in sufficient quantity. So he's kind of getting into the transitional stage into communism. Now it can't just happen instantly.
Right. Yeah. And so that's where we, differ from anarchists because anarchists have this idealist mentality of, society being able to be transformed immediately without some sort of like training wheels process, PG. But yeah, that is just like a utopian idealist, not rooted in material reality way of thinking. Yeah.
Yep, that's hey, this would be cool. Let's do it without thinking of the process of how to actually get there.
Right. Like a lot of people misconstrue communists all the time, saying like, "Oh, you're a communist because you don't like hard work." Like, bitch, excuse me, like we know communism is going to be hard work. Like it's not something that you just flip a switch and up we're communists, it's going to be a fucking process to make everything so everyone has like I mean, well, actually we can probably do that part, but like just the way that we have society organized now, like if we were like for example big ag, right? The way that we do agriculture right now not only is like extremely bad on the environment, but it's cruel to the animals and it doesn't need to be done that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if we go and we destroy that tomorrow, people will starve and die, right? So these are things that have to be done in a gradual process so that there are things in place so that we don't die, right? Would you agree, Frog? A good example.
Yeah, we have to seize existing systems. I think a lot about how the anarchist response. What would the anarchist response be to life-saving medicine, for instance.
Everyone does
I've yet
their
to hear
own
an answer
thing.
to that one. Like, what about like insulin? Insulin has a long production chain and it's a logistical nightmare. How is that going to spontaneously organize? So
I
things like
know, no,
that,
Keisha.
where
I didn't make this
people
one.
would die if we just abolish that without some kind of control over that system. Also, Sal, I noticed your Captain Picard has the 3 arrows. That's
Yeah.
a little sus.
Listen, okay, this was made a long time ago, and I wasn't exactly sure what the 3 arrows like represented, but we're just gonna go with it. We're gonna ignore.
Hey, Kishikami pointed out the same thing. It's the iron front symbol. Yeah, that
Yeah,
third arrow is anti-communism.
listen, if I do this presentation again, I will personally edit this just completely out. Just fuck those arrows. I'm not gonna arrow myself. Thank you, PG. I am an angel. I've never done anything wrong. Let's go.
At least the arrows aren't in a bunch. They may as well be.
Oh,
You know, sock dems are fascists.
for real. Sal is not sus. No, Sal is very normal and cool. But yeah, I didn't like relook at that, so don't judge me. I actually have to BRB. If you want to read the rest, I know I've been like making you read a whole bunch, and I'm so sorry, but like I really appreciate it. Yeah.
Your plan all along. Tricked me into doing a solo stream. All right. So the next section, what will be the course of this revolution? He kind of lays out a whole plan here, similar to the manifesto, how they have like their 10-point program. Above all, it will establish a democratic constitution, and through this, the direct or indirect dominance of the proletariat. Direct in England, where the proletarians are already a majority of the people. Indirect in France and Germany, where the majority of the people consists not only of proletarians, but also of small peasants and petty bourgeois, who are in the process of falling into the proletariat, who are more and more dependent in all their political interests on the proletariat, and who must therefore soon adapt to the demands of the proletariat. Perhaps this will cost a second struggle, but the outcome can only be the victory of the proletariat. Democracy would be wholly valueless to the proletariat if it were not immediately used as a means for putting through measures directed against private property and assuring the livelihood of the proletariat. The main measures emerging as the necessary result of existing relations are the following. 1. Limitation of private property through progressive taxation, heavy inheritance taxes, abolition of inheritance through collateral lines, brothers, nephews, etc., forced loans, etc. 2. Gradual expropriation of landowners, industrialists, railroad magnates, and ship owners, partly through competition by state industry, partly directly through compensation in the form of bonds. 3. Confiscation of the possessions of all immigrants and rebels against the majority of the people. 4. Organization of labor or employment of proletarians on publicly owned land in factories and workshops, with competition among the workers being abolished, and with the factory owners, insofar as they still exist, being obliged to pay the same high wages as those paid by the state. 5. An equal obligation on all members of society to work until such time as private property has been completely abolished. Formation of industrial armies, especially for agriculture. 6. Centralization of money and credit into the hands of the state through national bank with state capital, and the suppression of all private banks and bankers. 7. Increase in the number of national factories, workshops, railroads, ships, bringing new lands into cultivation and improvement of the land already under cultivation, all in proportion to the growth of the capital and labor force at the disposal of the nation. 8. Education of all children from the moment they can leave their mother's care in national establishments at national cost. Education and production together. 9. Construction on public lands of great palaces as communal dwellings for associated groups of citizens engaged in both industry and agriculture, and combining in their way of life the advantages of urban and rural conditions while avoiding the one sidedness and drawbacks of each. 10. Destruction of all unhealthy and jerry built dwellings in urban districts. 11. Equal inheritance rights for children born in and out of wedlock. That one's interesting since he talks about abolishing inheritance. Anyway, 12. Concentration of all means of transportation in the hands of the nation. It is impossible, of course, to carry out all these measures at once, but one will always bring others in its wake. Once the first radical attack on private property has been launched, the proletariat will find itself forced to go ever further, to concentrate increasingly in the hands of the state all capital, all agriculture, all transport, all trade. All the foregoing measures are directed to this end, and they will become practicable and feasible, capable of producing their centralizing effects to precisely the degree that the proletariat, through its labor, multiplies the country's productive forces. Finally, when all capital, all production, all exchange have been brought together in the hands of the nation, private property will disappear of its own accord. Money will become superfluous, and production will so expand and man so changed that society will be able to slough off whatever of its old economic habits may remain. So he's kind of getting into the higher phase of communism here and the whole transition that it would need to take. I see a lot of Ahab in the chat. ASAG? What's going on here? What's ASAG?
All Sals are good.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I love it. Stalin equals a baddie. All Sal are good. EG, I did a good job making you a VIP because you are very important to me right now. And always.
What is a VIP on Twitch? I'm clueless.
It just means you have a cool little diamond that says that I love you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's some like a special thing that we can give out. Oh my god, check this out. This is gorgeous, right? What can be done? What is to be done? Okay, are we at 19 or 20?
We are at 19.
Oh, we have a Discord. Would you like in, Reggie, or one of the people in our Discord? Or Reggie's a mod. Reggie, can you throw a link to our thing in there? What? Oh, it didn't work. Yes, we do have Discord. Cool. You sort that out, Hayes. You freaking potato chip.
Is that the Kim Il Sung on the heads there?
Yeah.
Love to see it.
Kim,
Doesn't get enough love.
Mao, Stalin, Marx, Engels, Lenin. That's who we got. Respect the Juchi. Okay, were you at 19 or 20, did we say?
19.
Okay.
Did you want me to read it, or are you gonna read it?
I'll read it this time. I know you've been doing a lot of reading.
Yeah, we got another very long one after this too.
Maybe I'll give up at that turn and that'll be your turn again.
We're almost at the end though.
Yeah, we're actually so close. And I don't know if you guys have read Theory by yourselves or at all before, but guess what? Now you can say you finished a whole fucking book. A whole Theory book. You're welcome. Juju gang, Juju gang, Juju gang. For real though, I love Juju. It's actually pretty cute. Everyone should look into it. Okay. Will it be possible for this revolution to take place in one country alone? Y'all know. No, it can't be done. By creating the world market, big industry has already brought all the people of the earth, and especially the civilized people, into such close relations with one another that none is independent of what happens to the others. Right? Oh, that's why This is a whole other like thing. I'll not even gonna go down that rabbit hole, that thought line.
Here goes Hayes with his love for Trotsky.
Trotsky, Hotsky. Oh my god.
Hayes is
Ew.
slowly becoming a trot.
He better not. I'll be the wait, who actually did it? Was probably just some rando, right? I don't know who did
Maoist to Trotskyist pipeline?
it. Okay, where am I at? No trots. Further, it has
A-tab.
a time for real. Brain trot. Oh my shit, look at that. Look at PG with those fucking Get him, PG.
Only
Jesus
good thing he's done was crushing Magnovia. That's not true. He also crushed Kronstadt.
Kronstadt and Magnovia. Oh my god, I love that meme where it's just like enter Magnovia. He's like, you know,
Oh, the one
you've
that's
seen
from like Doom or something.
it. Yeah.
Trotsky arriving at Magnovia.
I would like to pick at Trotsky's brain. Oh, got him. Fucking pwned. It wasn't him at Kronstadt, if I remember correctly.
I'm pretty sure it was. He was still leading the Red Army, wasn't he? And then he wrote that piece years later, Hue and Cry over Kronstadt.
Oh, so yeah, that's gonna be one of our emotes is hue and cry. But I also want a not like this one, but for Hayes. Hayes is gonna do the not like because I like that idea. What do you guys think about that idea? If you want the Trotsky emote first, put a 1. If you want Hayes going like this, put a 2. Actually, we'll do a poll. Oh, it's not working. Why is that not
First
working?
emote should be Ahab. I agree with that, actually.
Oh yeah, true.
An
Look, see,
official
we got
Ahab emote.
2s. Not like this. And not like this Hayes
Hey,
one. Nice.
can we ban Hayes for spamming?
Fuck Trotsky. Yeah, Hayes is pushing this hue and cry Trotsky emote on us. He's pushing it very hard. Okay. Further, it has coordinated the social development of the civilized countries to such an extent in all of them, bourgeoisie and proletariat have become the decisive classes, and the struggle between them the great struggle of today, or the day. It follows that the communist revolution will not merely be a national phenomenon, but must take place simultaneously in all countries. That is to say, at least in England, America, and Germany, and France. Yes. It says civilized, but I don't like that word. It will develop in each of these countries more or less rapidly according as one country or another has a more developed industry, greater wealth, and more significant mass of productive forces. Hence, it will go slowest and will meet most obstacles in Germany, most rapidly, and with the fewest difficulties in England. It will have a powerful impact on the other countries of the world and will radically alter the course of development which they have followed up until now while greatly stepping up its pace. It is a universal revolution and will accordingly have a universal range.
Yeah, he was obviously wrong here about some of this.
Right. Can't win them all,
Although,
buddy.
later in life, he and Marx agreed that the revolution was likely to start in Russia, actually. So they did
Nice.
predict it, but this was in 47, so they were still hoping it would be in England. But yeah, he does say civilized countries, which sounds a little chauvinist.
Right.
But we can understand that to mean basically the imperial core.
Right. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Or the people call things the global north or the global south, right?
Right.
Okay, what will be the consequences of ultimate disappearance of private property? So society will take all forces of production and means of commerce, as well as the exchange and distribution of products, out of the hands of private capitalists and will manage them in accordance with a plan based on the availability of resources and the needs of the whole society. In this way, most important of all, the evil consequences which are now associated with the conduct of big industry will be abolished. There will be no more crises. The expanded production, for which the present order of society is overproduction, and hence a prevailing cause of misery, will then be insufficient and in need of being expanded much further. Instead of generating misery, overproduction will reach beyond the elementary requirements of the society to assure the satisfaction of all the needs, or of the needs of all. It will create new needs and, at the same time, the means of satisfying them. It will become the condition of and the stimulus to new progress, which will no longer throw the whole social order into confusion as progress has always done in the past. Big industry, freed from the pressure of private property, will undergo such an expansion that what we now see will seem as petty as in comparison as manufacture seems when put beside the industry of our own day. The development of industry will make available to society a sufficient mass of products to satisfy the needs of everyone. The same will be true of agriculture, which also suffers from the pressure of private property and is held back by division of privately owned land into small parcels. Here, existing improvements in scientific procedures will be put into practice with a resulting leap forward which will assure to society all the products it needs. In this way, such an abundance of goods will be able to satisfy the needs of all its members. The division of society into different mutually hostile classes will then become unnecessary. Indeed, it will be not only unnecessary but intolerable in the new social order. The existence of class originated in the division of labor, and the division of labor, as it has been known up into the present, will completely disappear. For mechanical and chemical processes are not enough to bring industrial and agricultural production up to the level we have described. The capacities of the men who make the use of these products or these processes must undergo a corresponding development. Just as the peasants and manufacturing workers of the last century changed their whole way of life and became quite different people when they were drawn into big industry, in the same way, communal control over production by a society as a whole and the resulting of new development will both require an entirely different kind of human material. People will no longer be, as they are today, subordinated to a single branch of production, bound to it, exploited by it. They will no longer develop one of their faculties at the expense of others. They will no longer only know one branch, or one branch of a single branch of production as a whole. Each industry, as it is today, is finding such people less and less useful. Industry controlled by society as a whole and operated according to a plan presupposes well-rounded human beings, their faculties developed in balanced fashion, able to see the system of production in its entirety. The form of the division of labor, which makes one peasant, which makes one a peasant, another a cobbler, and a third a factory worker, and a fourth a stock market operator, has already been undermined by machinery and will completely disappear. Education will enable young people quickly to familiarize themselves with the whole system and production, and to pass from one branch of production to another in response to the need of society or their own inclinations. It will therefore free them from the one-sided character which is present-day division of labor impresses upon every individual. Communist society will, in this way make it possible for its members to put up or to put their comprehensively developed faculties to full use. But when this happens, classes will necessarily disappear. It follows that society organized on a communist basis is incompatible with the existence of classes on the one hand, and the very building of such a society provides the means of abolishing class differences in the other. A corollary of this is that the difference between city and country is destined to disappear. See, that's something that we talk about all the time, is like merging these two places. But yeah, the management of agriculture and industry by the same people rather than by two different classes of people is, if only for the purposes, or hold on, if only for purely material reasons, a necessary condition of communist association. The dispersal of the agricultural population on the land, alongside the crowding of the industrial population to the great cities, as a condition which corresponds to an undeveloped state of both agriculture and industry, and can be already felt as an obstacle to further development. The general cooperation of all members of society for the purpose of planned exploitation of the forces of production, the expansion of production to the point where it will satisfy the needs of all, the abolition of the situation in which the needs of some are satisfied at the expense of the needs of others, complete liquidation of classes and their conflicts, the rounded development of the capacities of all members of society through the elimination of the division of labor, or the present division of labor, through industrial education, through engaging in varying activities, through the participation by all the enjoyment, or by all in enjoyment produced by all, through the combination of city and country. These are the main consequences of the abolition of private property. Yeah, that was a long boy.
Yeah.
Any questions? The housing question. Oh yeah, that's coming up too.
Oh, are we doing that one?
Oh wait, is that a separate thing? Because I know it talks about housing in here, I believe.
I'm not sure it does.
Oh, okay.
He wrote a whole thing on the housing question.
Of course he did. I'm sure we
He
can go
wrote
over
he
that
wrote a
too.
thing on everything.
Yeah. It's almost like he wants us to be like prepared and like he wants to help us. Probably love my present. The housing question. How would that work? Wait, how would what work? They were not wrong. It was just that their theories had to be updated to the material conditions. I like that. Never wrong.
That's true.
God, my eyes are
But
like freaking water.
they were wrong in some of their predictions because they can't see the future. They can only speculate. And Lenin updated it to fit with the conditions of the 20th century, which Marx and Engels couldn't have necessarily foreseen.
When in doubt, dialectical materialism it out. True.
I like that.
That's where the abolition of the distinction of rural and city properties comes from. Yeah, okay. Okay, so yeah, the housing. I guess we do. Yeah, I haven't read that, so I guess we do need to read that. Well, I'm speaking for myself. Like, I always think of that mean so much unread communist theory. Like, see, reading this, you realize that you don't know something, and then you have to go read something else. Reading something never really solves it. You have to continue further down the rabbit hole of these books, which I kind of love, you know. Nice. But also, please give it to me in one book. Just kidding. Then it will be like as big as Capital. The housing question is just an essay. Oh, nice. Okay. I really enjoyed that the part you were reading reminded me of it. Oh, and that I really enjoyed and that part you were reading reminded me of it. Okay. Yeah, I definitely need to read it. So,
All right, I'm gonna get these next sections. We got a couple short little bangers here.
okay.
All right, what will be the influence of communist society on the family? It will transform the relations between the sexes into a purely private matter which concerns only the persons involved, and into which society has no occasion to intervene. It can do this since it does away with private property and educates children on a communal basis, and in this way removes the two bases of traditional marriage, the dependence rooted in private property, of the women on the man, and of the children on the parents. And here's the answer to the outcry of the highly moral Philistines against the community of women. Community of women is a condition which belongs entirely to bourgeois society and which today finds its complete expression in prostitution. But prostitution is based on private property and falls with it. Thus, communist society, instead of introducing community of women, in fact abolishes it.
Okay,
Now,
so this
we
is
should probably
exactly what
stop
I
and talk
was.
about this one.
Yes, this is
Yeah.
the one that I was reading this by myself, and I was like, what the fuck does he mean by this? Like, I do not know. Like,
Yeah,
who's
the
community
community
of
of women.
women? Yeah, I had no idea. So then I asked. I actually started out like, oh, we should talk about the things we disagree with. And Farrak's like, what do you exactly disagree with? And then we sent you know, we discussed this particular part. And can you pull up what you sent me and then how we like sorted it out?
Yeah, I'm in that right now because he talks about this community of women in the Communist Manifesto. It kind of fleshes it out because this idea of the community of women was a a popular argument at Marx and Engels during their time against communism. And he wrote in the manifesto they wrote, "But you communists would introduce community of women," screams the bourgeoisie in chorus. The bourgeois sees his wife as a mere instrument of production. He hears that the instruments of production are to be exploited in common, and naturally can come to no other conclusion than that the lot of being in common to all will likewise fall to the women. And so he's basically the bourgeoisie were saying that since women are the property of men, then public property means we're going to have public women, like state mandated girlfriend.
Right. Yeah. So like the bourgeois, they didn't understand like how communists viewed fucking women. So they were thinking like, "Oh yeah, we're going to just have a bunch of women and these are just going to be our property." But that's not what they're saying like at all. They're saying that these women are able to fucking choose. Like I just think it's funny that it's like the same incel like state mandated girlfriend situation. Like we're still dealing with people who misconstrue things kind of like that. A whole
Yeah.
sexually sexual mutual aid for fuck's sake.
Oh Lord.
Shit balls. Yes, thank you, V. We'd like to have that name censored in here. But yeah, so the community of women is just the way the bourgeois looks at women, which proves that they don't value women. They view them as property, right, Frog?
Yeah, and they elaborate a little more in the manifesto too. You wanted me to read the rest of it here.
No, I
It
wasn't saying
says,
that they would go. That's not what I thought. What did I think? I was just like, what did I think? I thought that they were just using. Oh, I thought they were calling prostitution bourgeois. You know, and I was like,
yeah,
that's stupid.
he's saying that it's prostitution arises because of private property.
Right. Which is
Because of private property, the people are in this destitution where they resort to prostitution.
yeah, and I
And so if
completely read
everybody
that
has
wrong.
their needs fulfilled, then prostitution will be abolished or at least dramatically reduce.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I was thinking that he was saying that prostitution is bourgeois because they are the private property. I was just completely like misreading that paragraph, and then we talked it out, and now I completely understand it. And also, community of women, I should have known because it's in quotations, or like that he was talking about something else, but there's no little one that tells you where he's talking about that from.
He elaborates more in the manifesto here. He says,
Oh yeah, read that.
yeah, okay, from where I was before, he said, he, meaning the bourgeois, has not even a suspicion that the real point aimed at is to do away with the status of women as mere instruments of production. For the rest, nothing is more ridiculous than the virtuous indignation of our bourgeois at the community of women, which they pretend is to be openly and officially established by the communists. The communists have no need to introduce community of women. It has existed almost from time immemorial. Our bourgeois, not content with having wives and daughters of their proletarians at their disposal, not to speak of common prostitutes, take the greatest pleasure in seducing each other's wives. Bourgeois marriage is, in reality, a system of wives in common, and thus, at the most, what the communists might possibly be reproached with is that they desire to introduce, in substitution for a hypocritically concealed and openly legalized community of women. For the rest, it is self-evident that the abolition of the present system of production must bring with it the abolition of the community of women springing from that system, that is, of prostitution, both public and private. So they're saying that marriage, in a sense, is a form of prostitution because of the way that women are subjugated and used as a tool of labor.
Yeah, and I do want to address the question. I think it was already, but yeah, will sex work be a thing that people can do under communism? No, because of decommodification, it will just be sex. You won't need to like have sex with somebody to like get something, all your needs will be met. Uh, so yeah, there's just gonna be sex. A lot of people have trouble with decommodification as a concept, I've learned.
Yeah, it's all we've ever known.
Yeah, commodifying like literally
Is
fucking everything.
commodification. Yeah, every element of our lives is commodified.
Well, how much does it cost? So, what will be the
All right.
attitude of communism to existing nationalities? The nationalities of people associating themselves in accordance with the principles of community will be compelled to mingle with each other as a result of association and thereby to dissolve themselves, just as the various estate and class distinctions must disappear through the abolition of their basis in private property. Okay, what will its attitude be to existing religions? All religions have so far have been the expression of historical stages of development and the individual peoples of groups of people. But communism is the stage of historical development which makes all existing religions superfluous and brings about their disappearance. So we're not telling people like you can't do it, but what Engels is suggesting is that we'll just like grow out of it, which that's a theory. Who knows?
Right, because as Marx and Engels viewed it, religion was a way basically for people to cope with this hellish existence, right?
Yeah, they would be like, "Oh, don't
People
worry, it's
turn to
bad
religion because
now."
of their suffering.
Yeah, don't worry, it's bad now, but when you die, you're going to go to a better place, a paradise. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So they're saying once people are happy and have their needs fulfilled, then they'll stop turning to religion and it'll wither away in a sense,
Right.
become less popular. I'm sure it would still exist, but I think they're right to an extent anyway. The establishment of religion would certainly disappear
So wait, what
as
Gomer say?
as the whole religious establishment is tied in with the bourgeois state too, you know.
Okay. There's a lot of contention about that, but let's get the
All right, are we on the oh, how do communists differ from socialists? Is that where we're at?
yes.
And then he breaks down different types of socialists here, which is this is kind of what he wrote in the manifesto as well. Do you want me to read the first one here?
Yes, please.
All right, reactionary socialists. The first category consists of adherents of a feudal and patriarchal society, which has already been destroyed and is still daily being destroyed by big industry and world trade and their creation, bourgeois society. This category concludes from the evils of existing society that feudal and patriarchal society must be restored because it was free of such evils. In one way or another, all their proposals are directed to this end. This category of reactionary socialists, for all their seeming partisanship and their scalding tears for the misery of the proletariat, is nevertheless energetically opposed by the communists for the following reasons. 1. It strives for something which is entirely impossible. 2. It seeks to establish the rule of the aristocracy, the guildmasters, the small producers, and their retinue of absolute or feudal monarchs, officials, soldiers, and priests, a society which was, to be sure, free of the evils of present day society, but which brought it at least as many evils without even offering to the oppressed workers the prospect of liberation through a communist revolution. 3. As soon as the proletariat becomes revolutionary and communist, these reactionary socialists show their true colors by immediately making common cause with the bourgeoisie against the proletarians.
And Hassan, you see, you know, you can, you can see this in our society today. Like all of these things are still an accurate description of what's happening. Um, Bourgeois socialists. The second category consists of adherents to present day society who have been frightened for its future by the evils to which it necessarily gives rise. What they want, therefore, is to maintain this society while getting rid of the evils which are an inherent part of it. To this end, some propose mere welfare measures, while others come forward with how do you say that? Grandiose? Is that how you say that?
I wasn't following the text.
Grandiose?
Yeah, grandiose.
uh, with grandiose systems of reform, which, under the pretense of reorganizing society, are in fact intended to preserve the foundations and hence of life of existing society. Communists must unremittingly struggle against these bourgeois socialists because they work for the enemies of the communists, and protect the society which communists aim to overthrow. You can
Now
read the
this one
last.
is very relevant. This is like the democratic socialists or social democrats, whatever.
You want to read
Right?
it?
They want to get the
Oh, yeah.
un, huh?
Sorry. I don't mean to cut you off.
No, I'm,
Continue.
I'm just talking about the bourgeois socialists because this is so relevant, I think, because this is people like Bernie, AOC,
Oh,
suck
yeah.
dems. They want to try to eliminate the evils of capitalism without getting rid of the system itself, not realizing that those evils are an inherent part of capitalism and they're inseparable from it. So they want to rise up the proletariat, They in the manifesto, I think they said it was like they want a bourgeoisie without a proletariat, which is not possible, obviously.
We'll all be bourgeoisie, Frog.
It's such an idealist way of viewing things too. 'Cause there can without the bourgeoisie there is no proletariat, and without the proletariat there can be no bourgeoisie. It's like they're they have a dialectical relationship. So
They bonk onto one another and they leave impressions. Just smash into each other. I kid too much.
as we call it, real ding dong shit. Gomer.
The people that called Rosa Luxemburg, that killed Rosa Luxemburg, right? Ding dongism, not to be confused
right.
with dang dongism. Yes, completely different. Sus stems. Bourgeoisie in one country. Merle.
All right, and then the next one here is democratic socialists. It says finally, the third category consists of democratic socialists who favor some of the same measures as communists advocate, as described in question 18. Not as part of the transition to communism, however, but as measures which they believe will be sufficient to abolish the misery and evils of present-day society. These democratic socialists are either proletarians who are not yet sufficiently clear about the conditions of the liberation of their class, or they are representatives of the petty bourgeoisie, a class which, prior to the achievement of democracy and the socialist measures to which it gives rise, has many interests in common with the proletariat. It follows that in moments of action, the communists will have to come to an understanding with these democratic socialists, and in general to follow as far as possible a common policy with them, provided that these socialists do not enter into the service of the ruling bourgeoisie and attack the communists. It is clear that this form of cooperation in action does not exclude the discussion of differences.
Beer galaxy. Sorry. Yeah. Friggin'. So they just fucking cooperate with the bourgeoisie. They don't actually like stand for change. They don't challenge the oppressive powers that we're dealing with. They are just like, oh, it's fine. We'll just do it next time. Just vote harder, you know?
Right. They don't want to go to communism. They just want to make nice capitalism. So they're not that different from the bourgeois socialists.
Yeah.
But it is interesting here. He mentions that we can work with democratic socialists, assuming that they don't enter into service of the ruling class and start attacking communists.
Right, but like,
so I think this is also important because we talk about democratic socialists and stuff, and some of them can be comrades, but then some of them will just turn on communists.
yeah, and yeah. So, like a good example is, I feel like Hassan calls himself a democratic socialist, but he will also talk shit about tankies, right? Like, the tankies are the ones that are gonna do the thing. Like, you need to not attack those people, but sometimes they fucking do. Are they gonna talk about sex soon, or should I just leave? Oh, you should leave. Bye. I didn't do anything. Okay. You don't.
Gomer says, I think a lot of poor dem socks turn communist with time. Yeah, I think so.
I hope
Especially as
so.
people start reading.
Sorry.
When people start to become radicalized, they go down that, suck dem, democratic socialists, whatever. They see the conditions of the world. They see reform clearly not working. Start to read a little bit. Honestly, once you start reading theory, it's like you're gonna become a communist pretty much.
Right.
Because
Stinky
the
and
main reason
proud.
people aren't communists is because they don't understand it, I feel like.
Absolutely. I mean, because like this is dope ass shit. Blankist is a better insult. Oh my god. I I have fantasies about blankism, if that's what you're referring to. But I know that it is idealist and it will never work because yes, you may be able to get power, but the people will not be on your side, and that just won't be able to keep it. Okay, see ya, hottie. Ew, gross. Blankism
Do
should
you
be
want to do
tried.
this last section, or should we skip the
Gomer,
last
I
section?
always
It's
talk
like
to you
so.
about blankism though, and you're like, no, no, that's bad, and I'm like, yeah, but it's super spicy, and I think it would be cute, and like everyone's like, no, Sal, no. I like have these fantasies in the group chat.
I'll be honest. I don't know what Blankism is.
Okay,
What is that?
blankism is where you just like take you just do the January 6th, but like you actually do it.
Oh, so just adventurism.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what Kooks says all the time to me. He always fucking says that. I'm like, God damn it, Kooks. I agree
Right. Like imagine
to a
if it was
point, but
communist on January 6th. It wouldn't have made a difference. It would just
well, they would have been
make them
more
crack down.
efficient, okay? I think they would have been far more
Yeah.
efficient. They
Right,
wouldn't
but
have
raiding
just like
capital is
taken
never gonna do
pictures.
anything.
Wait, what'd you say?
So just raiding the capital is not a revolution.
No, because you can't like you need to raid like every capital. That's like 50 capitals. That's like a mission that you have to do all in one night, and everything has to be coordinated perfectly. I've thought about it many times. It would make an excellent movie. It would have caused a big red scare. Well, yeah. Yeah, then I would not feel bad for them at that point. Like I wouldn't be angry that they were doing red scare cuz like yeah. But whatever. Blackhand doesn't work because you need the people's mandate. Right.
Yeah. Right, but if you don't have the people's support, it's just adventurism. People see you as terrorists rather than liberators.
Right. Yep. And that's like super important. Like that the people are on our side. Like so we just have to
Mhm.
figure out how to get them there. But yeah, you can continue reading.
Last section's super boring because he's just talking about his parties that existed at his time.
Oh yeah, I didn't even make a slide for it because
Right, it's like he's it's so within his time. I don't even know if it's worth reading it.
okay.
You want to just skip that one?
Well, it's short. I would hate for them to think that we're like keeping secrets.
Okay, if you want to. No, but it's just he's talking about contemporary political parties in the 1840s.
Okay, how about this? We'll do democracy in the chat. Put a 1 if you want to hear it. Put a 2 if you want to go do something else. And by do something else, I mean we'll say goodbye and we'll raid you into somebody. 1 for read, 2 for no read. Damn it, V. 4. Now we're just counting. Okay. Gomer, what is that?
You
No,
even see what is that?
no 3s, you cucks.
All right. Well, we have a few ones. I guess we should read it.
All right, yeah, let's read it.
Yeah.
What is the attitude of the communists to the other political parties of our time? This attitude is different in the different countries, obviously. In England, France, and Belgium, where the bourgeoisie rules, the communists still have a common interest with the various democratic parties, an interest which is all the greater the more closely the socialist measures they champion approach the aims of the communists. That is, the more clearly and definitely they represent the interests of the proletariat, and the more they depend on the proletariat for support. In England, for example, the working class Chartists are indefinitely closer to the communists than the democratic petty bourgeoisie or the so-called radicals. In America, where a democratic constitution has already been established, the communists must make the common cause with the party which will turn the constitution against the bourgeoisie, and use it in the interest of the proletariat, that is, with the agrarian national reforms. So that's actually interesting, where the democratic constitution has already been established. It's really funny.
Right. So just making use of the Constitution again and using it against the bourgeoisie, because really we know that the Constitution really doesn't apply to a certain class in society.
Mm-hmm. In Switzerland, the radicals, though a very mixed party, are the only group in which the communists can cooperate, and among these radicals, the Vaudois and Genevese are the most advanced. In Germany, finally, the decisive struggle now on the order of the day is that between the bourgeoisie and the absolute monarchy, since the communists cannot enter upon the decisive struggle between themselves and the bourgeoisie until the bourgeoisie is in power, it follows that it is in the interest of the communists to help the bourgeoisie to power as soon as possible in order to the sooner be able to overthrow it. Against the government, therefore, the communists must continually support the radical liberal party, taking care to avoid the self-deceptions of the bourgeoisie and not fall for the enticing promise of benefits which the victory of the bourgeoisie will allegedly bring to the proletariat. The sole advantage which the proletariat would derive from a bourgeoisie victory would consist of in various concessions which would facilitate the unification of the proletariat into a closely knit, battle-worthy, and organized class. In the certainly that on the very day of the absolute monarchy's fall, the struggle between bourgeoisie and proletariat will start. From that day on, thank you for following, the policy of the communists will be the same as it now is in the countries where the bourgeoisie is already in power. So I think that's interesting. The point one, in various concessions which would facilitate the unification of the proletariat into a closely knit, battle-worthy, and organized class. So, like, nationalizing healthcare, probably, like housing kind of shit, you know? Like, people can't be ready to fight if they're, like, hurting still, you know? We gotta help in some way. What would you think, Frog? That's why the Black Panther parties
Yeah.
are like so cool, because they kind of did that.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, people are saying in the chat that this analysis doesn't apply to the U.S. anymore, and yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, that's what
Because
Frog
Marx
said.
also
Yeah.
wrote. Yeah, also Marx also wrote some stuff about this, about how peaceful revolution might be possible in the U.S., but that was before there was this established bureaucracy and standing army and all these things. So, which Lenin actually contradicted that later. So I got some pins today in the mail. Check out this pin here.
That's so beautiful, Stalin.
I also got this one for the Soviet space program. So I thought these were pretty cool.
I have one similar. Here's
And
mine.
and then I got this one too.
Nice. I love it. Yeah, I love these pins. So my purpose for my
Oh,
pins.
nice! You got the same one.
Yeah. my purpose for my pins is like I will wear this when I am volunteering in my community, so that people are like, oh hey, what's that? Oh, look at that symbol. Oh, let's talk. It's a conversation starter, and let me tell you, it works, and I freaking love it. Because then they asked about it. I'm not being like, hi, let's talk about communism. They're like, what's your pin? And I'm like, oh, well, thank God for asking. Thank God you asked. I can go into my spiel. I don't know if everyone does like work in their community, but you should. You should. And I actually want to do a call to action for the end of this stream. I want you to go and talk to a real life human being about communism. Okay?
I'm a LARPer. I don't do that. No, actually, I talk to people. I meet so many people at work, and I'm always trying to radicalize. I maybe don't come out and say communism, but you know,
Oh no, not you. I just meant the
gotta
chat. The
be.
chat. I'm
Yeah,
telling
no,
you
I
the
know. I'm
chat.
just
Yeah.
contributing.
Okay. I didn't want you to think that I like gave you specifically the fucking call to action.
Oh no,
I'm like, Frog, please go.
no, because I'm saying that organizing doesn't necessarily have to be going out and doing mutual aid or whatever. Not everyone has time for that, but it can also take place in the workplace. Radicalize your coworkers, form a union.
Yes. Have you heard of the good word of Kwame Ture? In this conflict, between. Yes, we've heard a bit about him. Holy shit, this is the first time I've ever been to hear Sal. Really? Have I been like not able to be heard this whole time? Have you been not being able to hear me? Excuse me.
He said, "Put the mic back in your mouth."
Okay, I'm
Uh,
sorry. Caveat, if it's safe to do so. Wait. I'm not white, cis, or straight, and I live in Iowa. Oh, yeah. That's a good way to get shot out here.
yeah, V
Yes.
says, "Do not say you're a communist at work; you'll get fired." Yeah, that's true. You have to be tactful about it.
Right. Yeah.
I don't ever say I'm a communist, but I talk about communist ideas, and conservative workers agree with it all the time. If you separate the ideas from this propagandized vision of communism, then people tend to agree.
Yeah, and I just go out and say it because, like, fuck it.
Yeah, well, in other places at work, I'm not going to say it because I don't want to get fired.
Right. Yeah.
Because
That
they
makes
will fire
sense.
you for that. Out in public, yeah, I'll be loud and proud about it.
So, okay, we have left flank vets that are on. We have Luna Oi. I love Luna Oi. We have
Let's go to
Kenzo
Luna.
Shibata. Oh, you want to go to Luna? Okay.
It's my vote. I mean, we can do it democratically.
Oh my god, she's got such a cute outfit on today. Haas. If he goes on another date today, you will catch me in his chat. Actually, you won't catch me there because I'm fucking banned. I put a 2 in his chat. I said that he lost a debate, and that was too much for him to take. So I got kicked out. Dogs, because like I liked bad in that chat. Okay, Luna. Paz is my best friend. Same. Okay. Goodbye, everyone. All of our stuff has been thrown into the. I think we're gonna do actually for tomorrow, a strike, because of all the hate raids that have been going on. So we're going to stay in solidarity with the other Twitch streamers, because that's what we like to do here. Okay.
Yep. All right. Bye, everybody. Thanks for coming. Sorry if it was too boring with all the reading. Hope
No, it
everybody
wasn't
learned
boring.
something.
It was amazing. You're welcome,
Oh yeah,
chat.
Engels is always great.
Seriously, Ingalls is friggin' amazing. Okay. Oh no! We
Oh,
just
the
got
left
a
flank.
raid.
Yeah, we
Oh.
just got raided with like 100 people
Oh fuck.
right at
Okay.
the
Hold on.
end.
I'm gonna
Oh
do
yeah,
like an
Gomer did say
introduction just so we can say hi. Hi, Left Flank. It's me, Sal. We are the Red Army. We are a group of communists trying to make theory accessible while teaching and also like looking at news from a Marxist or proletarian perspective. Thank you so much for rating in. We just finished a 2.5 or a 2 hour what's it called? Oh shoot, I think we're
presentation.
yeah, presentation on the principles of communism, and we just accidentally rated shit.
Uh-oh.
Oh my god. Okay.
Oh,